You ever have one of those moments where time just stops? I don't mean in the poetic sense. I mean literally freezes. Like the universe is holding its breath because it knows something catastrophic is about to happen. That's exactly what the air felt like on the drill pad at Fort Ironwood, South Carolina. It was 100 degrees. The kind of humidity that feels like you're breathing through a wet wool blanket. And 200 recruits were standing frozen in formation. You could hear a pin drop in the red clay dirt dot, and then the sound, crack. It wasn't a clap of thunder. It was the sound of a hand striking flesh. A staff sergeant, a grown man with 15 years of combat experience, had just backhanded a 22-year-old female recruit across the face. Her head snapped back. Blood, bright and shocking against her dark skin, started to trickle from her lip. But she didn't fall. She didn't cry. She just stood there, staring through him, while he breathed heavy, thinking he had just taught her a lesson about power, what he didn't know what he couldn't possibly know because his own arrogance had blinded him was that for black SUVs were currently tearing down the main access road, doing 80 miles an hour, carrying enough brass to sink a battleship. He thought he was breaking a nobody. He had no idea he had just assaulted the daughter of the man who signs his paycheck. But to understand why that slap was the end of his life as he knew it, we have to go back. We have to go back 72 hours to when the bus first rolled through those iron gates. Fort Ironwood isn't a place you go to find yourself. It's a place you go to get broken down and rebuilt. It smells like diesel fuel, pine sol, and fear. When that bus hissed to a halt at 0500 hours, 47 kids stepped off. They were terrified. Except for one, Maya Vance. She stepped off that bus with a duffel bag in one hand and a look in her eyes that was way too calm. For a fresh recruit, Maya was small, weary, with skin the color of deep mahogany and a posture that looked like she had a steel rod for a spine. She didn't look around nervously like the others. She scanned the perimeter. She checked the exits. She was analyzing the train. Now, here's the secret Maya was carrying in her back pocket. Her phone was buzzing. The caller ID didn't say Dad. It said the chairman, for stars. Her father was General Marcus Vance, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We are talking about the guy who advises the president, the guy whose voice makes generals stand up straighter. Maya silenced the call. She didn't answer. She had made a deal with herself. She wasn't going to be the general's daughter here. She wasn't going to pull rank. She wanted to earn her stripes in the mud, just like everyone else. She wanted to know, deep in her soul, that she was good enough without the safety net. So she was just Private Vance, or so she thought. The intake process is a nightmare of paperwork and shouting, run by people who haven't slept in 3 years. The clerk at the desk was a woman named Specialist Sarah Jenkins. Jenkins was bored, chewing gum, stamping forms, until she picked up Maya's file. She froze. Her eyes went wide, bouncing from the file to Maya's face, then back to the file. Emergency contact, Marcus Vance, she whispered. Relationship, father. Phone number, Pentagon Secure Line 1. Jenkins looked up, her mouth hanging open. She knew that name. Everyone in uniform knew that name. She looked at Maya, and Maya just gave her the tiniest shake of her head. A silent plea. Please don't blow my cover. Jenkins, bless her heart, swallowed hard. She stamped the paper. Welcome to hell, Private, she muttered, sliding the folder into the stack. She kept the secret. But secrets in the Army are like water, they eventually find a crack to leak through. Then he walked in, Drill Sergeant Silas Graves. They called him the Butcher. He was 6'3", built like a brick outhouse, with a shaved head and eyes that looked like they'd seen the devil and were unimpressed. Graves was old school, and not the good kind of old school. I'm talking about the kind that believes the Army went soft the minute they started letting certain people in. He hated weakness, or what he perceived as weakness. And to him, a young, black woman who looked like she belonged in a library was the definition of weakness. He walked down the line of recruits, stopping in front of each one. Name? He barked at a farm boy from Ohio. Private Miller, Drill Sergeant. Name? Private Kowalski, Drill Sergeant. Then he got to Maya. He stopped. He looked her up and down, his lip curling in a sneer that was pure, unfiltered nastiness. He didn't ask her name. He looked at the number pinned to her gear. Number 42. He grunted. Private Vance. Drill, sir, I didn't ask you to speak. Number 42. He screamed, spit flying. You think you're special? You think you have a name? You are a quota. You are a checkbox the Army forced me to fill so they can put a picture on a brochure. You don't have a name in my world. Instead of praising her, he targeted her. Morning formation. Day 3. The sun isn't even up yet. Graves is prowling the lines. He stops at Maya. Her boots are polished to a mirror shine. Her uniform is razor sharp. You're a disgrace. 42. He hissed. Drill sergeant. My uniform is within regulation, Maya said, staring straight ahead. Are you back-talking me? He leaned in close. You think because you can shoot a gun you belong in my army? I know your type. You're arrogant. You think the world owes you something. He was projecting so hard he could have been an IMAX theater. Drop, he ordered. Push until I get tired. Maya dropped. The red clay was wet and cold. She started pushing. 1, 2, 10, 50. She did 60 perfect push-ups without breaking a sweat. When she stood up, her uniform was covered in mud, but her eyes were clear. She wasn't broken. She was just getting started. That afternoon, Graves tried to isolate her. In the mess hall, he announced that anyone who sat with number 42 would be scrubbing toilets with a toothbrush until 0300. So, Maya ate alone. She sat at the end of a long metal table, chewing her food methodically, surrounded by 200 people, but completely isolated. But she wasn't entirely alone. She had her phone. Now, recruits aren't supposed to have phones during the day. But Maya had kept hers hidden for a reason. Every night, under her blanket, she was documenting everything. Every slur Graves whispered. Every unfair punishment. Every time he refused to call her by her name. And because her brother, Julian, was a JAG lawyer, that's a military attorney, he had set her phone up to auto-upload everything to a secure cloud server the second it had a signal. Graves thought he was bullying a helpless girl. In reality, he was building a legal case against himself, frame by frame. The breaking point came at 0400 on the 4th day. Graves kicked open the door to the female barracks for a surprise inspection. He went straight to Maya's bunk. He tore the sheets off. He dumped her footlocker upside down. And then, he found the phone taped under the mattress. He held it up like a trophy. Well. Number 42. Contraband. That is my personal property. Drill sergeant, Maya said, standing at attention in her PT gear. It's evidence of insubordination. Graves smirked. He pocketed the phone. I'll be taking this, and I don't think you'll be getting it back. He thought he had one. He thought he had just cut off her lifeline. He didn't know the upload was already complete. He didn't know that 500 miles away, a server had just finished processing a file named evidence_graves_day4.mp4. Which brings us back to the drill pad. The heat, the slap. It was morning formation. Graves called Maya to the front. He was holding her phone in one hand and a disciplinary form in the other. He wanted a show. He wanted to humiliate her in front of the entire company, so that no one would ever respect her again. This recruit, Graves bellowed, pointing at Maya, is a liar. She is a cheat. She hides phones. She breaks rules. And you know why? Because people like her don't have the discipline to be soldiers. They are filler. They are numbers. He turned to her. Isn't that right, number 42? You're just a number. Maya looked at him. She was done. She was done playing the game. My name, she said, her voice cutting through the humid air like a knife, is Maya Vance. It is on the roster. It has been on the roster for 5 days. You have never looked at it because you are too busy hating what you think I represent. The silence was deafening. Graves turned purple. The veins in his neck bulged out like cords. You do not speak to me. He screamed. You are nothing. You are a nameless, faceless nobody. I am a soldier, Maya said calmly, and I demand to be treated with the dignity afforded to me by the Uniform Code of Military Justice. That was it. That was the trigger. Graves didn't see a recruit anymore. He saw his own insecurity staring back at him. He saw a world that was leaving him behind. You want dignity? He snarled. He reared back and slapped her. Crack. The impact knocked her head to the side. Her lips split. A drop of blood hit the dust, For 3 seconds, nobody moved. The other recruits were horrified. Striking a recruit is the cardinal sin. It's career suicide. It's jail time. Graves stood there, breathing hard, his hands stinging. You could see the realization wash over him he had gone too far. But then, he doubled down. He sneered. "Get back in line. 42. Maya wiped the blood from her lip. She looked at the red smear on her thumb. Then she looked at Graves. She didn't look angry. She looked disappointed. "You really should have learned my name," she whispered. "What did you say?" Graves stepped forward again, raising his hand. But he never got to swing again. Because at that exact moment, the sound of engines roared over the tree line. Not just trucks. This was the distinct, high-pitched whine of turbocharged engines moving fast. Everyone turned. Through the heat haze, for black government SUVs, flanked by military police motorcycles, tore onto the gravel parade deck, kicking up a storm of red dust. They screeched to a halt in a phalanx formation, blocking the exit. Doors flew open, and out stepped the firing squad. Not a literal one. This was worse. First out was Colonel Patricia Sterling, the Inspector General. She's the one who hunts bad cops in the Army. Next was Colonel David Thorne, the base commander, the guy who owns the ground they were standing on. Then came Colonel Richard Hayes, JAG Corps' top legal brass. And finally, Colonel Evelyn Wright from Equal Opportunity, for full-bird colonels. In the military, you don't see for colonels in one place unless the world is ending or someone is about to be. Buried. Graves went pale. He looked like all the blood had been drained out of his body with a syringe. He started to stammer, snapping to a salute that looked like his arm was made of jello. "Attention on deck," he squeaked. The colonels didn't even look at him. They walked right past him, a wall of decorated green uniform, straight to Maya. Colonel Sterling, the Inspector General, stopped in front of Maya. She saw the blood on her lip. Her eyes narrowed into slits. She pulled a handkerchief from her pocket and handed it to Maya. "Private," Sterling said. "I don't know, sir." When Silas Graves whispered those words, the silence that followed was heavy enough to crush a tank. He stood there, sweating through his uniform, admitting to 4 of the highest-ranking officers in the United States Army that he had brutalized a soldier for a week, without even affording her the basic dignity of an identity. Colonel Thorne looked at Graves with pure disgust. It wasn't anger anymore. It was the look you give something you stepped in on the sidewalk. "You don't know," Thorne repeated. He turned to Colonel Sterling. "Read it to him." Colonel Sterling opened a leather portfolio. She didn't shout. She read with the precision of a surgeon cutting out a tumor. Recruit name, Maya Elizabeth Vance. Education, bachelor's in geopolitics. Stanford University, graduating summa cum laude. PT score, 300 out of 300. Marksman qualification, expert. Graves blinked. "Stanford, expert marksman?" Sterling continued. "Emergency contact, General Marcus Vance. Relationship, father." Graves froze. His brain short-circuited. He looked at Sterling, then at the base commander, and finally at Maya. "Vance?" he whispered. "General Vance, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff," Sterling clarified, closing the folder with a snap. "The man who runs the military you serve in. You just backhanded his only daughter." The color didn't just leave Graves' face. His soul seemed to leave his body. He looked at Maya, really looked at her for the first time. He saw the resemblance, the jawline, the eyes. It was undeniable. He hadn't just broken a regulation. He had tried to break the princess of the Pentagon. I didn't know," Graves stammered, looking for a lifeline, looking for an excuse. She never said. "If I had known." "Stop," Maya said. She stepped forward, pushing the medic's hand away gently. She walked up to Graves until she was standing toe-to-toe with him. She was a foot shorter, bleeding and bruised, but in that moment, she was the tallest person on the field. "If you had known," Maya said, her voice steady, "you would have treated me nice. You would have polished my boots for me. You would have given me a pass." She gestured to the other recruits, standing in formation behind her, the farm kids, the inner city kids, the ones with no connections. "But I didn't want to be treated like a general's daughter, Sergeant. I wanted to see how you treat a nobody." I wanted to see how you treat a soldier who has no power. She pointed to her bleeding lip. And now we know. Colonel Thorne stepped between them. MPs. Two massive military police officers stepped forward, handcuffs gleaming in the sun. Staff Sergeant Graves, Thorne announced, his voice booming. You are relieved of duty, effective immediately. You are under arrest for assault on a subordinate, conduct unbecoming, and violation of Article 93 cruelty and maltreatment. Get him out of my sight. Graves didn't fight. He couldn't. He slumped, his shoulders collapsing as the cuffs clicked onto his wrists. As they dragged him away, he looked back at Maya one last time. He looked like a man waking up from a dream to find his house burning down. What is her name? Thorne yelled after him. You will have plenty of time to memorize it in Leavenworth. The moment Graves was shoved into the back of a police cruiser, a calm descended on the drill pad. The fear that had gripped those 46 other recruits vanished, replaced by awe. Then, the sound of a helicopter, a Black Hawk chopper flared over the trees, landing right in the middle of the parade field, blowing dust everywhere. The door slid open before the rotors even stopped spinning. General Marcus Vance stepped out. He wasn't wearing his dress blues. He was in fatigues, for stars on his chest, looking like a man who was ready to tear a mountain apart with his bare hands. He walked straight to Maya. The colonels saluted, but he ignored them. He grabbed his daughter by the shoulders, looking at her lip, looking at her eyes. Maya, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Are you okay? I'm fine, Dad, she said, managing a crooked smile. Just a scratch. I told you. He shook his head, looking equal parts proud and furious. I told you not to do this the hard way. I could have made a call. You didn't have to take this. Yes, I did, Maya said firmly. Because if I hadn't, he would still be here. He'd be doing this to someone else next week. Someone who couldn't call you. The general looked at her. He looked at the recruits watching them. He took a deep breath and nodded. You're stubborn. Just like your mother, I learned from the best, she replied. The investigation that followed was swift and brutal in a legal sense. They seized Graves' records. It turned out Maya wasn't the first. There were dozens of complaints filed over the years, mostly from minority recruits, that had been misplaced or ignored. Graves had a pattern. He targeted the ones he thought were weak, the ones he thought nobody would miss. But because of the evidence on Maya's cloud drive, the recordings, the timestamps, the photos, they had him dead to rights. 6 months later, the court-martial was held.